Should we continue now, children?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
It's from page
Yes, ma'am.
number, yes, put the date, page number 72. Okay. And
Yes, ma'am.
what?
Ma'am, on with para 8:30.
Yes. Okay. So now what happens? He was known as Evans the Break there. Why? Because 3 times he had already escaped from the prison. So the prison officers called him Evans the Break, and now they say that he won't be there in the governor's residential area of
Good morning,
premises.
ma'am.
He has been shifted, good morning, beta, to HM prison where tight security, they have been done tight security. It has been done so that not a chance he might get, not an opportunity he might get to escape. Clear? And governor himself is going to see about his security and everything. And he is appearing in O-level German examination at 30 p.m. on Monday 7. Now the German teacher, he wishes him good luck, and he says that you haven't a catch in the health chance of getting through. Now this thing, it has two meanings, what I said. You do not have any opportunity to escape from here, and the other thing, that was for everybody, okay, that applied to everyone, so that they might listen to it and they might not come to know their planning. तो वो बोलता है कि yes, there is no chance of you to pass through the examination, right? But he answers, Evans answers that he may surprise everybody. Now at 8:30 the following morning, put the date here.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. At 8:30 the following morning. Following is what? The next morning. Okay. Evans had a visitor, two visitors in fact. He tucked his grubby string vest into his equally grubby trousers. Tucking is pushing him. Okay. Grubby is dirty, and vest you know very well. So he just put his or pushed his dirty vest into the dirty trousers and stood up from his bunk. You know what is a bunk? What is a bunk? It is a platform that is made there in the cell. Cell is the what? Where the prisoners are kept. Okay. Lockup जो होता है ना, लॉकअप समझ गए, जेल में. तो क्या होता है कि प्लेटफॉर्म टाइप बना दिया जाता है where they sit and they sleep. Okay, a cemented platform. It is a narrow one, not too broad. So he was sitting there. He stood up from his bunk, smiling cheerfully. Morning, Mr. Jackson. This is indeed an honor. Okay. And he welcomes Mr. Jackson. Two of the visitors. Now, who were the visitors? Mr. Jackson was there and Mr. Stephens. Jackson was the senior prison officer on D wing. Underline it. And he and Evans had already become warm enemies. Okay. At Jackson's side stood officer Stephens. Okay. Underline it. A burly. Burly means strong. Strong and large man. Surely looking. Surely means bad tempered. Bad tempered. Only recently recruited. Recruited means appointed to the profession. Now, Jackson was the senior prison officer on the D wing, and the Stephens, he was somewhat strong and healthy man, and he looked bad tempered also, and he was recently appointed to the post. Now Jackson nodded curtly, and how's a little Einstein this morning then? Now Jackson, he just joked with this prisoner Evans, and he just teased him by calling him Einstein. Wasn't he a mathematician, Mr. Jackson? I think he was a Jew. Okay. Now Evans, he says that yes, Einstein was a mathematician, and he thinks that he was a Jew. Okay. Why did he say a Jew? Because he considered him as a rough man. Now, this was just a joke, okay? This was just a teasing by Mr. Jackson. It has no relation with this chapter. Evan's face was unshaven and he wore a filthy looking red and white bobble hat upon his head. Now, see, Evans' face, it was unshaven, means he did not shave it, okay? And he was having a filthy is dirty looking red or white bobble head upon his head. है ना? Underline it. Give me a chance, Mr. Jackson. I was just going to shave when you burst in. Now he says, just give me a chance, means give me some time. Okay. I was just going to shave when you entered. Which reminds me, so Jackson कहता I am being reminded, and he turns to Stephens. So he says, which reminds me, Jackson turned his eyes on Stephens. Make sure you take his razor out of the cell when he has finished scrapping that ugly mug of his. Clear. One of these days he will do us all a favor and cut his bloody throat. Okay. Now Jackson, he turns to Mr. Stephens and he says that Stephens, it reminds me on seeing his razor. Remember to remove this razor out of the cell when he has finished scrubbing. Scrubbing means removing that dirty, okay, beard means of him when he has shaved himself. Remove this razor out of the cell. And why? Because these days he can do anything just to escape. He might play any trick to escape from here. For a few seconds, Evans looked thoughtfully at the man standing ramrod. Ramrod is in the rigid manner. In front of him, a what is a string? A line of Second World War medals proudly paraded over his left breast pocket. Okay. Now, for a few seconds, Evans, he was looking at this man Jackson, and he who was standing in a rigid manner in front of him, and he had all the line of medals that was there on his dress, okay, on his the prison officer's dress, And then he says, Mr. Jackson, and then he asks him something. Mr. Jackson, was it you who took my nail scissors away? Evans had always worried about his hands. क्या आपने मेरे nail scissors लिए? And your nail file too, Jackson says. Okay, he says, of course, and I have taken your nail filer too. Gia, you're very late. Why are you so late, Gia? Look, for a moment, Evan's eyes smoldered. Smoldered means burnt with anger, became red with anger. Dangerously, but Jackson was ready for him. Now look, he says, his eyes, they were red with anger, right? And he says, look, why? Because he did not like the idea that Jackson had taken away his nail scissors and nail filer. So, but Jackson, he was ready for this kind of response, aggressive response, okay? But before he could speak anything more, okay, Jackson कहता है orders of the governor Evans. He stops him by saying that it was not my wish or my will. Okay, I didn't do it on my own. It were the orders of the governor. And he leaned forward and leered, his voice dropping to a harsh, contemptuous whisper. You want to complain? Now he leaned forward and just leered, in a very disrespectful, in a very hateful manner, he says, he whispered rather, you want to complain, he said. शिकायत करना चाहते हो. Even shrugged his shoulders lightly. The crisis was over. Okay, his anger, it vanished, it's gone. And as soon as he listened that those were the orders of the governor. You have got half an hour to smarten yourself up, Evans, and take that bloody hat off. And now he says you are going to have half an hour to smarten yourself, to shave yourself, and just tidy yourself, and just take that dirty hat off. Now what happens? Me, that Evans put his right hand lovingly on top of the filthy woolen and smiled sadly. Okay? But the me, that means not interested to take off. Okay? Do you know, Mr. Jackson, it's the only thing that has ever brought me any sort of luck in life. Right? Now he says, do you know, Mr. Jackson, it is the only thing, this is the thing that has always been a lucky charm for me. It had proved very lucky for me. है ना? kind of lucky charm, and if you know what I mean. And today I thought, well, with me exam and all. Okay, he doesn't want to take off the head, and he says, and today also, because I'm having my exam, so it has always been very lucky to me. So that is why, and he just wants him to permit him to not to take off that hat. Buried somewhere in Jackson was a tiny core of compassion. Compassion, you got it? Though he looked very hard hearted, but he wasn't, okay? Internal means inside he had very soft feelings, and Evans knew it very well. Just this once, then Shirley Temple, okay? Now he again teases him and calls him Shirley Temple. Who was Shirley Temple? Shirley Temple is an actress who has long wavy hair. Wavy, you got it? Somewhat curly hair, okay? Like कंगना रनौत, she has ना in the similar manner. तो उसको छेड़ता है वो, Shirley Temple बोलता है. क्यों? If there was one thing that Jackson genuinely loathed, means hated about Evans, it was his long wavy hair. है ना? क्यों बोलता है? क्योंकि इसके भी बड़े long wavy hair थे. तो उसको Shirley Temple बोल के tease करता है and get that shaven, okay, and shave your. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
At
Yes,
8:45 the
ma'am.
same morning, the Reverend, who are the Reverend people? Members of the church, they are known as Reverend. Stott McLary, underline the invigilator, left his bachelor's flat in Broad Street, underline it, and stepped out briskly towards Carfax. Carfax is the place. At 8:45 the same morning, Stott McLary came out of his flat that was there in the Broad Street, and he moved towards Carfax. The weatherman reported temperatures considerably below the normal for early June, and the weatherman, they reported that the temperatures, they were quite below the normal temperature as it was the June month, and a long black overcoat and a shallow crowned clerical hat who was wearing McLary, it had provided welcome protection from the steady drizzle. Steady drizzle is continuous. Loathed means hated. Lakshay, hated. So now he was wearing a black overcoat and a shallow crowned clerical hat he was wearing, and this has provided him a kind of a protection, okay, from the continuous drizzling that had started half an hour earlier, okay, जो थोड़ी बहुत drizzling शुरू हो गई थी, बारिश शुरू हो गई थी, उससे बचत हो रही थी, and which now spattered means the raindrops were falling on the thick lenses of his spectacles, right? उसके spectacles पे the raindrops were falling. In his right hand, he was carrying a small brown suitcase. He was carrying a small brown suitcase which contained all that he would need for his morning duties, including, underline karo, sorry, a sealed question paper envelope, a yellow invigilation form, a special authentication card from the examination board, a paper knife, a Bible. Why? Because he was to speak to the Women's Guild that afternoon on the Book of Ruth, and a current copy of the Church Times, the newspaper. The 2-hour examination was scheduled to start at 9:15 a.m. Okay. At what time the examination was about to start, beta? At 9:15 a.m. Clear or not?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Everyone?
Yes,
Ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Now, Evans was lathering his face. Now he was shaving his face. He rubbed the soap, okay, and lot of foam was there, and he was just shaving his face vigorously when Stephens, he brought in 2 small square tables, set them opposite each other in the narrow space between the bunk on the one side and on the other a distempered stone wall. Okay. Now Evans, when he was shaving, meanwhile, who comes? Stephens, he comes and he just places 2 tables opposite to each other in the room, okay, in that cell, in that lockup, okay, on the one side was the bunk, and the other side the distempered faded wall was there. Uske beech mein two tables he places, okay, opposite to each other, and on the other side a distempered stone wall was there. Next, Stephens brought in two hard chairs, the slightly less battered of which he placed in front of the table which stood nearer the cell door. Okay. Next, Stephens ने दो hard chairs जो थी वो लेकर आता है, and उसमें से slightly है ना less battered थी, worn out थी, and he placed in front of the table which stood near the cell door. Jackson put in a brief final appearance. Behave yourself. Ready now, Jackson, finally appears. He wants Evans to behave in a proper manner, and Evans turned and nodded. Okay, he nodded. Okay, and then these Jackson pointed to the pin-ups of. Okay, now he pointed towards the posters, that were pasted on the wall. So he asked him to take them off. Why? Those were the dirty posters. Evans turned and nodded again. I was going to take them down anyway. Okay. He says, yes, I was about to remove them. A minister, isn't he? The chap coming to sit, and I mean, now he says a minister means a man from the church. Who says? Evans, he says, means he's a invigilator. Okay. तो वो invigilator है, तो वो कहता है yes, okay, he's an invigilator. The chap who's coming to sit means who's going to invigilate. And how did you know that? Asked Jackson quietly. Now, Jackson, he was somewhat this thinking. How did you come to know that who will be the invigilator? Well, I had to sign some forms, didn't I? And I couldn't help. Now, he's too smart, Evans, too clever, very cunning. So he says, I went there to sign some of the forms. Why? Because he was appearing in the O-level German exams. And he says, then I couldn't help myself to look there. Okay. Why? Because the other forms were also lying there in which the invigilator's name it was written. तो कहता I just couldn't help looking there. समझ में आया कि मैं अपने आप को रोक नहीं पाया, and I just looked there. Clear or not?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Okay. Now Evans drew the razor carefully down his left cheek and left a neat sweat in the white leather. Can I ask you something, Mr. Jackson? He says. Why did they have to bug me in this cell? Okay, now he wants to inquire why they have to bug me, means they have to close me in this cell. He nodded his head vaguely to a point above the door, okay, and he just nodded his head, okay, without anything. So, not a very neat job, conceded Jackson. Jackson also conceded. He also admits, yes, it is not right. Why did they close you up? Okay, why did they put you in the cell? They don't honestly think I'm going to cry. Okay, they are not means, at least he knows very well that they don't trust him. Who? The events, he's not being trusted by the prison authorities. Why? He may try anything. They are taking no chances. Events, nobody in his senses would take any chance with you. Events, he says, they are not going to take any kind of risk. Nobody, nobody in his senses, they can take any kind of risk. Who's going to listen in? Now the microphone was attached, so he says, who will listen? Okay. Who's going to
Ma'am, you are
listen in?
not audible.
I'm not audible. Why? Am I audible to others?
Yes, ma'am. You are
तो
audible.
रहना, some network problem is there. Some network problem. So he says, who's going to listen in? Okay. I'll tell you who's going to listen in, lady. Okay. It's the governor himself. Jackson कहता है, governor himself is going to listen. He don't trust you a bloody inch. Okay. He doesn't trust you a bloody inch, and nor do I. Jackson says, even I do not trust you. I will be watching you like a hawk. Okay. और जैसे हॉक वॉच करता है ना, बड़ी शार्प नजर होती है हॉक की, सिमिलरली इवन आई विल बी वाचिंग यू इवेंट, so keep your nose clean, clear. And he walked through the door, okay, and ask him to behave well, okay, not to play any tricks, not to play any mischief, right? And he says okay, bye, and he just walked away. Got it, beta? समझ में आया?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
अच्छा,
ma'am.
रिवाइज कर लेना. Okay. Tomorrow we are going to
Yes, ma'am.
continue. Goodbye and take care.